Hey guys, in this video we're going to go over an update to the tank prototype for the Witchhunter using the Cloak of Flame and Sorcery Ward to get some nice physical damage mitigation with converting some of our phys damage to fire, and then doing a lot of damage reduction there with stuff like the heat proofing node on the passive tree to apply some of our armor to the fire damage we take. And then after that, having our Sorcery Ward absorb a lot of that damage as well as elemental damage. So this defense system ended up working really well for the amount of investment I put into it. It's actually really cheap to build, and you do feel very tanky to a lot of physical and elemental damage. Now, it's not really perfect in that, you know, it's a life-based build, so chaos damage does kind of wreck you, and then when your sorcery ward is down, then you are very vulnerable. Now, these kind of issues can be fixed. Well, at least the sorcery ward issue, there is sort of like a bug with Sorcery Ward where you can't add quality, which ends up being a really big deal. So we are missing quite a lot of that potential from Sorcery Ward, as well as, you know, depending on how much armor you get. Like, it's pretty reasonable to get maybe even up to 15-20k armor in this setup. And then with that kind of setup with a, you know, fully working Sorcery Ward, we'd have, you know, 15k or so shield pretty much, right? So 15k barrier for, you know, 50-ish% of your physical damage and elemental damage is pretty insane, right? When you do get to that kind of stage, you're pretty much going to be almost immortal to those kind of damage types, but then chaos damage is still going to kind of wreck you. Right, so we'll go over my thoughts on this type of defensive setup as well as crossbow in general. What kind of content have I done so far? Basically been doing the T15 maps, pretty much only T15 maps at this point, and then been doing, whenever I can, I do T16s and like area level 82 areas and that kind of stuff. And this character can actually farm all those areas without any like really ridiculously expensive items. My bow is still the same, like 570 DPS bow. We're not doing any stat stacking, so you know, it's actually like pretty cheap build, I'd say. Except for my belt. My belt, I did buy the Ingenuity belt, but I mean, I wasn't even using this for half the time, so I mean, this is pretty much just like a DPS increase, right? But I mean, even without the belt, I was still having a good time, and I think this setup is actually, one of the good things about it is that it's really cheap to actually get going. Alright, so this is the Breach boss fight. Now this one is the tier 2 fight, and you can see a lot of his abilities, this character can actually just kind of stand there and tank them. The one ability that I did have a little bit of problem with was when like a bunch of like hands come out of the ground. I guess you can kind of see it happen later on in this fight, but you could see like the beginning, his like finger thing. I believe that is like a physical spell. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked at the database, but it is doing damage directly to my health, so it's either a physical or chaos spell. But like, yeah, these hands are the only thing that actually gave me trouble. And I guess the freeze is a little bit annoying, but your shield, once you have enough shield, then you can actually absorb it, right? But yeah, you can see the hand phase, I guess, is quite a little bit tricky, but a lot of his like spells and that kind of stuff, since we are mitigating spell damage and physical damage quite well with this character, you can see that it is actually able to tank some of those kind of spells. Now, damage-wise, it's okay, right? I think at this point, my Shock Burst round tooltip was about, I think like 28k DPS, and then maybe about 200k on the actual pulses. So yeah, not like anything special, but still actually not bad, right? And nice thing is, I like doing these fights, and it didn't really feel that stressful. I guess, well, these hands were a little bit annoying. You have to dodge them, but for the most part, you can kind of trust that your sorcery ward is going to basically block everything and can make a few mistakes in the fight, right? So that was kind of nice. Right, and that's the same kind of thing with like the Citadel boss and that kind of, or at least the one that I've done. I'll have the Citadel boss at like the very end, or maybe in a separate video, depending on how long this video gets, so you can actually see the build in action. Okay, but this sort of defense system, while it is good, I think because of like how cheap it was to set up, and it was pretty effective against most things, it's not really perfect, right? There are still problems with it. And one of the main problems is going to be chaos damage. So chaos damage is probably the thing you're the weakest to, and you can see my chaos res not really that good. I did actually play with capped chaos res for a bit, and I didn't even really notice a difference. the chaos things that killed me when I wasn't capped still killed me when I was capped, so it didn't really make a difference. So you can still get one shot by a lot of things. You know, chaos damage, first of all, like the plants, even though they nerf the plants, they still kill you if you stand on them. That's, I guess, mainly has to do with our low HP pool, right? Like, we're really tanky against physical and elemental damage, but then when chaos, you know, when there's chaos damage, you just kind of fall over. Also, you know, once your shield is gone, then you're pretty vulnerable to being one-shot by physical or elemental damage. So there is sort of a bug with Source Reward right now, in that you can't add quality to it, and this is a really, really big deal. Just to give you guys an idea, let's say we had about 10,000 armor, which is like pretty easy to do. Source Reward is right now, it's 30% of our armor, right? And then it is increased by 50%. So we just do this, and then we have a 4,500 shield. Now, if we could actually add quality to it, then we actually end up getting way more, because instead of 30% of our armor and evasion, it's actually going to be 40%. And then times it by 1.5 and we get 6,000. So it's like 1,500 HP on average, right, that you're losing out on. All right, so let's start with the gear. So a lot of people ask me to show my gear, so we'll kind of show my gear, I guess, right? So this is my crossbow I've been using. I bought it a long time ago. It was like 30 exalts. But yeah, anyways, this is the bow we're using. My rings are nothing really that special. I'm just looking for some resistances, and then mainly the flat added lightning damage, and then life and flat evasion, because we can get more armor with the iron reflexes. Okay, and then this one here, one nice thing to do with your rings is if you get all elemental resistances, this has like the fire, lightning, and cold tag all inside this elemental resistances. So if you use a lightning catalyst on it, it's also going to increase this all elemental resistances. And that's nice because then you can, you know, get your flat added lightning damage and increase that and a resistance at the same time. So it's kind of nice. Okay, so helmet. I'm still using this 1,400 armor helmet. It's still, you know, serves me pretty good. No, not having life is kind of a problem, but it is what it is. This thing just gives so much armor. Okay, so I did get a new amulet. This one's pretty awesome, right? It's got the increased armor. It's got % increased life. I mean, only 4%, but you know, you kind of take what you get at this point. And then we got the spirit, we got the proj skill, and then we got some attributes. So it makes gearing and that kind of stuff quite a bit easier. Okay, so I'm still using my Cloak of Flame from the previous video, and then my gloves I think are still the same. It's just some armor, attack speed, stats, and that kind of stuff. And the boots are probably still the same, I think. Okay, so as for skills, been doing quite a few changes. Skill source reward is kind of still the same. And for galvanic shards now, we're still using fork, and then we're going to be using, I put in mobility just because it kind of makes you move faster in maps when you're kind of like shooting, so I kind of liked it, and I already had like enough damage, I think. And then actually, like what I'm doing is, because now there isn't that many boss nodes. Like I have one right here ready for us to do in the showcase, but you know, most of your maps are not going to have bosses in them, right? So why even, you know, put your best gems in your boss killing setup when there's no bosses, right? So actually what I'm doing is I'm actually just putting my more damage skills into the galvanic shards, and then whenever I go to a boss node, then I just kind of swap them down like this. Right, and you can see in our full DPS setup for shock burst rounds, we're at about 31,000 hit DPS on the projectile, and the pulses are about 220,000 DPS. So, you know, about to like 250 combined DPS, and then you combine that with like 100% shock, so it's about 500,000 ish DPS, maybe a little bit more, on single target bosses. So not really like that good or that bad, but you know, it's I think pretty decent. Okay, so let's put these back here. Okay, so for the Stormcaller arrow, one big change I made was I took out the gem that makes your shocks do more damage but have less duration, right? Because this was like pretty good, like 75% increased magnitude of shocks, but you have less shock duration, and the less shock duration was kind of annoying, and I realized we could actually just get enough shock effect without the gem and then keep all the duration, right? So basically what we've done is I guess we'll go over this a little bit later, but I set up some weapon swaps on the tree. We'll cover those after we go over the gems. But now able to get up to 90% shock, and probably couldn't get to 100% with a couple of gem changes and that kind of stuff, or jewel changes. Okay, so that is the Stormcaller, and after that you probably put Strip Away in here so you get a little bit more exposure effect, but that's pretty much the changes for that. Then Ripwire Ballista hasn't really changed. I'm using Font of Rage, the totem placement speed, and then the Font of Blood, so we get a little bit of regen. I mean, not important because I barely even use this guy, but anyways, he's just here. And then we have the emergency reload. This hasn't really changed. And then we get Herald of Thunder, and the cast on shock setup hasn't changed as well. But then when I'm mapping now, I don't even really need cast on shock for mapping, right? Because you really shouldn't need to have a curse and conductivity in maps against rare monsters, right? You only need this for map bosses and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what I think at least, right? So what I'm doing now is I just put Herald of Ash on because I like the effects, right? I don't really think Herald of Ash actually does that much damage, but it just looks really good, right? And that's like one of the main reasons why I'm even playing Witchhunter, is because I just want everything to blow up, right? So we got the explosions here, and then we got the Herald of Ash explosions, and everything looks really good. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's like a pure visual thing, I think. I mean, it does a little bit of damage, right? But nothing really substantial. Okay, so that is the gems. Let's go over the tree. So passive tree, this top part hasn't changed. And there is one setup I did try that was kind of fun, where we went all the way up here for this lighting area here. But some of the main changes we've made is, so far you see we have some timeless jewels and one of these against the darkness jewels. So first of all, let's go over the weapon swaps. So basically in PoE 2 you can have 2 weapon sets, right? See them over here. And we're using about 12 points for our weapon set. So what this allows us to do is, on our crossbow, we can have all of these damage nodes right over here. And then on our bow set, which is applying our shocks for the bosses, well, then we can go and spec into these shock magnitude, or ailment magnitude, or shock magnitude, right? So we get some here, and all of this shock duration, shock stuff, we don't really even need it on our crossbow setup when we're clearing maps, but we can use it on our bow setup to actually get insanely long shocks. Like my shock is like over 10 seconds long. It's actually so long, the shock lasts so long that I'm only having to reapply shock because my my curse and my mark falls off, right? So basically, yeah, it's just, the shocks are pretty insane when you set it up like this. You can get this insane shock duration and also like max shock effect, while not even losing pretty much any points on the tree. Because if you don't have the shock set up, well, then you're probably gonna have to lose some damage, right? You're gonna have to either cut out some damage here, or cut out some shock magnitude here, or maybe even cut out some of your defense in order to pick all of it up on one weapon. So weapon swaps, pretty insane. I think pretty much any build that can use a good weapon swap should use it. And it's like, it's so like, it's pretty seamless, right? You just in hideout, it's gonna bug out, but you just push the button and your character actually just uses the skill, right? So really, really cool. And probably in every other build, in every build that I try, we'll probably have some kind of weapon swap tech, whether it be like with this shock, like shocking for like 100% shock, or doing a setup for like curses, so you get like tons of curse effect and that kind of stuff. Okay, so that is some of the changes. Now, one other change is the timeless jewel. So I got a timeless jewel heroic tragedy. This one is from Medivh, and Medivh gives you the Knightly Tenant's Keystone, which means it changes our dex to, instead of give accuracy, to give us increased armor. So now we can use dex to get some armor. It also does change the notables around here. Some pretty interesting ones, like this one here gives 10% increased attack speed. And also, so now that we're not doing electrocute, there was a little bit of concern about, well, if you lose your electrocute, that's like half your defense in the, in end game and that kind of stuff. But once you do start getting enough damage, instead of electrocuting, you're going to be stunning quite often with the galvanic shards and shock burst rounds. So like I'm actually stunning bosses pretty reliably now. I guess now that I increased my damage by quite a bit. So that's something kind of interesting. So instead of going into electrocute, you can actually spec a little bit into stun and use stun instead of electrocute as sort of like a defensive layer, like similar like you did with the Kitoko gloves. Okay, so other than that, I've spec'd in to get a little bit more armor. Now, maybe pathing through this strength area would be a little bit better, and when I do level up a little bit, I'll probably change the pathing so we go through here, because this strength area is going to be giving quite a bit of HP, right? So we get some HP and come through here. And then finally, once I do have some more points, I would probably path up this way and get the maximum resistance towards the end, and then this jewel socket. That's sort of it for this kind of build, and I guess the idea is that we could stack decks to increase our armor, as well as using iron reflexes and general's bindings to get a lot of armor. And so we could actually be using evasion helmet, evasion boots to get some flat evasion, and then we get some more armor from our flat evasion, which gets, what do you call it? It does work with iron reflexes. Kind of wrong about this one in my last video, but that's kind of cool. So the reason why I'm not using them is because, well, the armor bases are actually just like 100 times cheaper than the evasion bases right now. Evasion bases like this, a helmet like this, even with like no life, is like 2 divines, 3 divines, right? But then armor base is like 5 exalts for this. So, and the benefit you get from going pure evasion is pretty minor, right? All right, so let's just say we get up to 25k armor, which is probably doable with like good gear, right? End game. And then let's see, and then if we can actually get to about 25k, then I probably drop the cloak of flame, right, for a rare body armor. Okay, so let's say we get this 40% of 25k, that's 10k shield, and then we also times 1.5k, so that's going to be a 15k barrier for elemental damage. So pretty much you're not going to ever die to elemental damage, right? But anyways, so that's some kind of like food for thought, and I think this build has really high potential for defenses at the top end. Maybe not this entire setup, because like we said, the chaos damage part is pretty bad. Like the chaos damage situation with the setup is pretty bad, and it's probably what's going to end up killing you a lot of the time. So I think what I probably might try next, if I don't go play another build, because I do want to try out some other builds, but I think we just go CI, stack energy shield and evasion, and play a CI character pretty much, right? Because that's like probably the best way to build characters right now, is just to play energy shield, because life stacking is just bad. But anyways, so that is sort of the situation. Oh, also do have this Against the Darkness here, so you can get this. Okay, so I also do have this jewel here, the Against the Darkness time loss jewel. So this one is giving me maximum fire resistance and cold resistance, but it's probably like, you know, this is like some of the tools you're going to use to actually allow you to get to 90 max res is pretty much going to be this jewel here, the Against the Darkness, and then all of your other small jewels here that can give +2, and maybe even go into an Adorn setup so you can get like +4 from one of these jewels. And then this area here, and then the soul cores on your body armor. So with that, I think with a good enough setup, we'll get to 90, 90, 90, or 90 fire, then like 85, 85 cold and lightning. Okay, so that is some of the main changes to the build, pretty much. And yeah, so far we'll go into a map showcase after this so you guys can see what it's like. All right, so let's jump into the boss. We've got a Savannah boss. Now this boss actually is a good sort of showcase, I guess, because he does a lot of phys damage, right? I guess you'll kind of see. And let's do this T15 map here. There's a lot of physical damage in this fight, and before, when I was running my pure armor set, this guy would just like one-shot me all the time, right? Maybe he will one-shot us too, but... So, this build, a lot of people have told me that, oh man, this looks kind of slow, clear doesn't look really all that good, but this is... the whole point of this build is to sort of test out this sort of defensive system, right, with the Cloak of Flame setup and that kind of stuff, right? And there is definitely ways you can increase your clear, I guess, right, or your movement speed, if that's kind of what is, you know, the kind of character you want to build, right? Alright, well, let's kill these guys off and run over to the boss. He's usually all the way up here. I don't know why, but this map is always like super laggy for me. Alright, and then I think once you get enough damage too, you just don't even need to swap over to your, what do you call it, shock burst rounds for like rare monsters, because that's like pretty annoying to do in maps, right? And right now, I'm not even set up for like full damage on my galvanic shards, but I mean, that's probably ideally what you would do once you do get like a 5 link for that. Alright, man, we stuck in here. And some of these layouts. Okay, well, we did get a speed shrine, but I'll take this off for the boss, guys, because I don't really think it's fair, but just help us get to the boss a little bit quicker. Alright, so this is usually where he is, I think. Yeah, there we go. So let's kill these guys off real quick. And so for bossing, we're going to put our Lightning Infusion and Martial Tempo. Oh, wait, why do we have so much damage? Oh, it's this shrine. All right, I'm going to turn off Herald of Ash, put on Cast on Shock. And let's load up our rounds, get our bow ready. And hopefully, well, actually, usually I'm actually killing these guys off, right? But yeah, you can see, like, well, okay, that almost did kill me. But yeah, let's go kill them off. I guess I did lose some HP, but okay, not really doing such a good job in the showcase. But there we go, kill them off. Okay, but yeah, that like ability he does, the slam, that would always kill me. Even the smaller ones would kill me, right? But now with this like kind of setup, it's actually able to survive it, well, barely, right? Okay, a little bit sketchy map showcase, but that's kind of the state of the character right now. Like I said, it works pretty well, I'd say, for like a cheap way to like mitigate physical damage, as well as getting your source reward to mitigate a decent amount of elemental damage. But then the weaknesses of the build are going to be chaos damage, low HP pool, and once your reward is gone, you're pretty much kind of dead. Also, like I mentioned, the bugs with Witchhunter and the source reward. So we're actually losing quite a bit of our, potential source reward numbers here. And then, right, so I think maybe right now, not really all that great to play this type of build on Witchhunter because of these kind of issues. But maybe in the future, when GGG actually fixes some of these things, we can come back to this build and see how it performs. Like I mentioned, we get up to like 25k armor. It's going to be like, what, it's 15, 16k source reward bubble. So that's going to be kind of insane. All right, but I think that'll be it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.